Thank you. Kindly take your seats. Honorable Vice Chancellor of the best university, SDG 4. Let me congratulate you on that award. But like I told you in your office, I didn't have the privilege of being trained in the best university, but I had the privilege of being trained in the premier university of Ghana. Our chairman, Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia, my running mate for the 2020 election and former Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, and also Minister of Education, Honorable Nana Jenopoko Ajiman, executives and members of the Atta Memorial Heritage, and indeed, as Prof would have said, to cut it short, my brothers and sisters, and everybody qualified as his brother or his sister. So my brothers and sisters, forgive me, let me stand on existing protocol. And thank you very much for this event. Let me thank the organizers first for what has been a year-long journey. I remember when we held the first lecture in the Premier University of Ghana at the University of Ghana, Legon. I had the privilege of being present, and it was announced that the lecture was going to be taken around the whole country. And it has gone around the whole country. And today marks the climax. I think they reserved the best for last. They reserved the best for Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, which is named after the greatest Ghanaian, the greatest African of the 21st century, if I remember. And that's Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was voted the greatest African. And so it's no wonder that an accomplished lecturer like Professor Lumumba was invited to deliver this last lecture. And I won't attempt to dilute his lecture, and I've learned his wisdom that when you talk about a great man, you don't talk for too long. And so I'm going to take the wisdom from him and just say a few brief things about Professor Mills. Last Monday, we gathered at his gravesite to honor his memory. And all his comrades, friends, family were present to honor his memory on the 11th anniversary of his passing. I remarked that day that the weather appeared the same as the day he died. It was overcast, it was a bit chilly, and the sun refused to show its face virtually the whole day, as if it was reminding us of that fateful day in 2012 when all of us were shocked to hear his passing. For those of us who have worked with him closely, will forever cherish his memory. And that is why we continue to celebrate his life every year, not because we want to worship him, but because his attributes are in such short supply in Ghana today that we need to continue to celebrate him and to repeat his attributes so that those in public leadership, those in leadership today, will learn from the man Atta Mills. Much has been said about him, and so I'm not going to come and repeat them. But we know that today, as Professor Lumumba said, Africa is in crisis. There's conflict across the land. We have the activities of terrorists and insurgents all over. Our countries are in economic crisis, and there is anarchy in many places. But I'll single our own country, Ghana, the black star of Africa, the country in which a lot of people held high hopes in, the country that led the liberation struggle for Africa. And to say that much the same as we see across the continent, is happening in our own country. Our economy is in crisis, and there is hardship across the land. Corruption and theft have become the new normal and not the exception. Impunity has enveloped our land, and public officials carry themselves as if they own the country. Ostentation has become the hallmark of people in office, and arrogance has become the prime character of the current leadership. Now, if you look at all that is happening in Ghana today, they were completely contrary to the attributes that Atta Mills espoused. Atta Mills was a man of integrity, and all of us can vouch for his integrity. He was a modest man and didn't need millions of dollars in his house to survive. Atta Mills was humble and respected everybody, from the oldest person to the youngest person. He treated everybody as a human being and treated them with decency and decorum. He was a very practical person, and he was a very transparent person. As one of those who worked very closely with him, I'll share a few anecdotes that will put his persona in greater perspective. We all know he was a man of peace, and his mantra that we all heard all the time was Ameze Mepe Asumdwe, and that is how come he repeated it so often that his opponent thought they were mocking him by calling him Asumdwe Hene, and it actually became the most appropriate title for him. And so in Ghana today, we all call him with pride, the Asumdwe Hene. And that is why the park where he's buried, where we gathered to celebrate him just last Monday, is named the Asumdwe Park, the Park of Peace. President Mills in 2008, when there was a lot of tension in the land in the run-up to the elections, macho men were running riot all over the place and threatening to inflict violence on people just to capture political power. He famously said, "No amount of political power is worth shedding a drop of blood of any single Ghanaian." And so if he was going to bath this country in bloodshed, then he rather didn't want to be president. He didn't want the power. And so he restrained our people from responding with violence on any occasion. And it was the wish of God that he should be president of this country. And so despite all the shenanigans and the conspiracies and attempts to go and dump dead bodies in the Volta Lake to prove that party agents had been lynched and killed in Volta region, despite the Bantama figures and other huge figures that were faxed in again after the counting had been done, despite all that, and despite time, for those of you who remember time, and despite time, God had ordained that he will be president of this country in order that his attributes shall shine forth across the land, and he won the election. Atta Mills believed in state institutions, and he believed in strengthening state institutions. And so he did not interfere in the work of state institutions. He did not weaponize justice. He did not exercise selective justice. Indeed, many of us were impatient with him because of his moniker, Father for All. And so a lot of people in the party were quite impatient with him because he would not do some of the things that they expected he should do. Go after his political opponents on a witch hunt. And so he didn't interfere in the judiciary. He didn't interfere in the legislature. Indeed, he didn't interfere in any state institution. He let them to do their work independently. And that was one of the marks of Atta Mills. Today, we miss him because we know justice has been weaponized in this country. Selective justice is ruling across this land. And we hope that this anniversary on which we celebrate him will send a signal to those in office that the judiciary is supposed to be independent and justice must be blind and must not be one that is manipulated for the interest of who are in power. Atta Mills was modest and humble. And one of the first things he did, and I remember as his vice president, we had to attend a banquet at the beginning of the session of every session of Parliament. And at the end of every session of Parliament, we had to attend a banquet on July 1st, Republic Day. We had to attend a banquet on Independence Day. Indeed, there was every reason to attend banquets. And in his usual modest self, he says, how much do all these banquets cost? And why should we hold so many banquets? And so he canceled all the banquets. And so if you remember, for those of you, after Independence Day, we all went home to eat our banku and things. There was no banquet in the evening, no drinking of champagne or anything. July 1st, we only had Senior Citizens Day. That was a day to honor senior citizens. And it was not a banquet, it was a lunch. And so they went and ate different Ghanaian. And he even said the dishes should be Ghanaian dishes. And only water was served. The hardest liquor was a small bottle of mini club beer, that was given to the senior citizens. And so it's only when we had visiting heads of state that he allowed banquets to be held in honor of those visiting heads of states. He abhorred ostentation. And I'll tell this story. There was a minister, all ministers were given Toyota cars, small Toyota cars. And there was a minister in a particular ministry whose ministry bought for him, a department under his ministry, paid for a very high-level car for him, the kind of cars that are used, by heads of state. And Atta Mills got wind of it. And he summoned the minister, and I will not name names. And he ordered the minister to surrender the car. And he gave the car to state protocol to use it for visiting heads of states and other people who were coming. Atta Mills did not shield or clear anybody who was accused of corruption in his government. If you were accused of corruption, he allowed the law to take its course. He did not attempt to shield you or to clear you. There was one thing he detested, that is undermining your colleague. And I'm sure there are some people here who would remember what I'm talking about. If you went to Atta Mills' office and went and made a report against your colleague or sought to undermine your colleague, he would listen to you quietly. And then afterwards, he will make an excuse and ask you to wait for a while. I just have to go and fetch something from the residence and come back. And so when he gets up, you ask his secretary to call the colleague that you are reporting to him. And so when the colleague arrives, Atta Mills will come back to the office and bring your colleague in, and then he'll ask his secretary to bring you. And so when you come in, you see the person you were talking about sitting with him. And then he says, so and so, I won't name names. Repeat what you were telling me about him. And in Ghanaian English, we say, come and see stammering. People who are not stammerers begin to stammer. And he will sit you and you will confront the colleague and say what you said again. And after that, you learn a lesson that Atta Mills is not the type who listens to idle gossip. Atta Mills was very religious, and he had faith in his God. Indeed, he had prayer warriors in the castle praying 24/7 for the nation and for the leadership and for himself. And I remember the current president and his colleagues described him as turning the castle into a prayer camp. And he said, in glory of Jesus, if I had my way, I'll turn the whole of Ghana into a prayer camp. But despite his deep religiosity, he did not ever consider that building a cathedral was the best way to express his faith. And so there's much about the man Atta Mills that we must learn from as a nation. And so on this occasion, I want to thank our speaker for doing justice to the subject that we invited him to speak on, and for celebrating a man whom we all cherish and a man whom we all miss. And as he said, the least we can do is to live up to his attributes. And so I want to thank him very much. My comrade and friend, thank you for honoring our invitation. I'd like to thank the chairman for representing Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, and for spending your time here with us, and for all those who came in memory of a great man. I want to thank you very much, and to say, may the memory of Atta Mills live on forever. As it is said, if you live a life worthy of emulation, you never die in the memory of people. And so when they say Atta Mills never dies, or Kwame Nkrumah never dies, it doesn't mean they are mortal persons who will not pass away, but it means that their names will continue to be remembered forever. Thank you very much. God bless you.
So, on behalf of the J.E.A. Mills Memorial Heritage, and of course the people of Ghana, we would like to recognize and also celebrate you, Professor P.L.O. Lumumba, as you would kindly join us upstage, and then we can show our appreciation. And this will be done by, of course, Your Excellency, John Dramani Mahama, Honorable Betty Maud Idrisu, and Honorable Alex Segbefia. You may want to join us as well. Okay, let me hand over the microphone. So, let's show appreciation. Round of applause. So this is a presentation done by His Excellency John Dramani Mahama on behalf of the people of Ghana, doing this for the J.E.A. Mills Memorial Heritage. Please, a round of applause. Round of applause. Let's keep clapping. Let's celebrate Prof. As this is done, and you're watching history unfold right before your eyes.
On behalf of the John Evans Atta Mills Memorial Heritage, I'm pleased to present this Kente Show to Mrs. PLO Lumumba. Is it the better half or the other half?
The other.
I'll tell you a joke. We celebrated our 30th anniversary, myself and my wife, Lodina. And we did a photo shoot. Oh, no, that was last year. We did a photo shoot, and we had to change into several clothes. And among the clothes we had to wear, there were 2 T-shirts. And one said the better half, and the other said the other half. And you know what? She had made the other half my T-shirt. So she wore the better half, I wore the other half. That's why I asked you.
Thank you.
Now the more difficult one. Have you won a Kente cloth before?
But I never quite get it.
Then I'm just like you. They have to use safety pins to hold it when I wear a Kente cloth. But we'll try.
So here we go. Professor PLO Lumumba being adorned the kente cloth by the President John Dramani Mahama. Round of applause. Yes.